She sold herself to save her dying father. $300 of debt was going to destroy everything her family had left. So when a stranger offered to pay it all in exchange for marriage, Lydia said yes. She expected poverty, a tiny cabin, a hard, lonely life in the mountains with a man she'd never met. What she found instead was a hidden empire. Her poor mountain husband wasn't poor at all. He owned the largest timber operation west of Denver, and he had been watching her for weeks before he ever knocked on her door. But why would a wealthy man pretend to be poor just to marry a desperate girl from nowhere? The answer will shock you, because this isn't a love story. It's a story about a woman who discovered her own power when everyone expected her to be grateful and stay silent, stay until the end. Because the moment Lydia faces down the people who tried to destroy her, you'll remember why you never gave up on yourself. The lesson. Your circumstances don't define your worth. The choices you make when you have nothing reveal who you truly are. And that strength can build an empire. If this story inspired you, drop a comment and tell me. Have you ever turned your worst moment into your greatest opportunity? Hit like, share with someone who needs to hear this today, and subscribe so you never miss another story that proves it's never too late to become who you were meant to be. It all started the day the debt collector came calling. Lydia saw Samuel Garrett's horse outside their little cabin. He was a man who collected lives, not just money. Inside, her father was fading fast, and the house was dying right along with him. Her mother, who was once a real beauty, had become a ghost made of worry. "We are not good for the money, Mama," Lydia said, the truth cutting like a shard of glass. Her father's room held the scent of sickness and surrender. Thomas Hale, a man who once carried grown calves across his shoulders, was now just a whisper under a quilt. "I failed you, girl," he breathed, his hand finding hers. "I am leaving you with nothing." But Lydia refused to cry. Tears were a luxury they just could not afford. "We will figure something out," she promised, though she had no idea how. Through the thin walls, she heard Mr. Garrett talking down to her mother. "Sympathy does not pay the bills, Mrs. Hale." That was all Lydia needed to hear. She marched right out there to face him. He looked her up and down like she was a horse for sale. "How much?" she asked, her voice steady. Garrett just smiled, pulling out his ledger. $317.42. The number felt like a physical blow, an impossible mountain they could never hope to climb. "You have 2 weeks, Garrett told them, snapping his book shut. "After that, the sheriff will be here to remove you." The door slammed, leaving behind a silence thick with defeat. Lydia was still standing there, trapped in her despair, when she heard a second horse. This one approached slowly with a calm and measured pace. A tall rider in rough mountain clothes got down, tied his reins, and walked toward their door. He was younger than he looked from a distance, with quiet gray eyes that seemed to see everything at once. "My name is Ethan Crow," he said, his voice deep and calm. "I have a proposition for you." He stepped inside but did not sit. "I will be direct," he said, his eyes fixed on Lydia. "I need a wife. You need money. I am prepared to pay off your family's debts in exchange for marriage." Her mother gasped. Before she could protest, Ethan produced a bank draft. He handed it to Lydia. It was for $400, more than enough to settle the debt and save their home. "Here is a bank draft for $400. That much money would settle her family's debts, but the price was steep." The stranger, Ethan Crow, wanted her to be his wife and live with him up in the high country. Lydia stared at the paper, feeling dizzy. She had never seen so much money in her life. She had to ask, "Why do you need to buy a wife? Surely women would marry you for free." A faint smile touched Ethan's lips. "Because a business deal has no false hopes. I need a partner, someone to run a household. Someone," he said slowly, "who knows some things are more important than money." Her mother, Margaret, stepped in. "Absolutely not. Lydia, this is madness." Lydia never took her eyes off Ethan. "Is it more mad than watching Papa die while we lose our home?" she asked quietly. "There has to be another way," her mother pleaded. Lydia looked back at the stranger. "I will not agree to this blind. I need to see your home first." For a moment, Ethan was still. Then he gave a slow nod. "Fair enough, but I can tell you it is remote. You will have food, shelter, and your own space. I am looking for a partner, Miss Hale, not a servant." "A partner in what?" Lydia asked. "In survival," he answered. He left the draft on their small wooden table. "You have until tomorrow evening. If you agree, meet me at the North Crossroads the next morning at dawn. Bring one bag." Her mother spoke up. "And the money?" Ethan looked at her directly. "The debt is paid the moment she agrees. I keep my word." Then he was gone, leaving only the sound of his horse fading away. That night, their little cabin was full of tension. "You cannot be serious," Margaret said, her hands twisting a dish towel. "Marriage is not a business transaction." Lydia looked at the bank draft on the table. "At least this way I know exactly what I am getting into." "You know nothing," her mother cried. "He could be a dangerous man." Just then, a weak but clear voice came from the bedroom. It was her father, Thomas. "He could also be our only chance." "Let her speak, Margaret." They gathered by his bed. Thomas looked from his wife to his daughter, his eyes sharp despite the fever. "I will not be here long enough to see this through," he said plainly. "So I will say my piece now." He took Lydia's hand. "You are 22 years old, and you have spent years holding this family together. You have put your own life aside for us. I have seen you staring out that window, searching for a life you cannot have." He squeezed her hand. "I do not know this man, but I know you. You are smart and you are strong. If you believe this is a risk worth taking, then I trust you." Lydia looked at her mother. "I know this is not the life you dream for me, but I would rather face this stranger than watch us all drown, waiting for a miracle that will not come." Margaret began to cry silently. "What if he hurts you?" she whispered. "Then I will leave," Lydia promised. "The money will be paid. I will come home." After a long silence, Thomas spoke again, his voice firm. "If you do this, you do it smart. Keep some money hidden. Learn the land around you. Make yourself so valuable that he needs you." The next day was a blur. Lydia packed her one bag carefully, choosing practical things and a few small treasures, like her father's watch. Word had already spread through their small town. A neighbor, Sarah Mitchell, stopped by, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Is it true? You are marrying that mountain hermit, Ethan Crow?" she asked. "People tell stories about him. They say he is hiding from something, or that he found gold." Lydia just shook her head. "They are only stories, Sarah, not facts." Later, her mother brought her a cup of tea. She had also packed a small bundle for Lydia. "Some food, medicine, and that blue shawl you like," Margaret said, her voice thick with emotion. "No matter what happens, you are my daughter. That will never change." They hugged, and in that moment, Lydia knew she could face whatever was waiting for her at the crossroads. That evening, Lydia went to her father's room, her last night as his daughter. He whispered, "Tomorrow. You having second thoughts?" She shook her head. "I am terrified, but I have no regrets." He coughed out a weak laugh. "You are tougher than you think, Lydia girl." She kissed his forehead, trying to memorize the feel of his skin. Tomorrow, her whole life would change. But for tonight, she was just Lydia Hale, making peace with who she was about to become. The morning came cold and gray. She put on her best blue wool dress, one her mother had made 3 years prior. The woman looking back from the mirror was different. Her jaw was set firm. She was a woman who had made a choice, and it showed. Margaret insisted on breakfast, but nobody could eat. Finally, it was time to go. Her mother wrapped a shawl around her. "You write to us," she said, her voice tight. Promise me." Lydia nodded. "I will, Mama. I promise." Her father called out from his room. "Be brave, but not reckless. Be kind, but not soft. Now go on, and do not look back." She walked out of that cabin without a single backward glance. Ethan Crow was waiting at the north crossroads with 2 horses. He had cleaned up some, his beard trimmed and wearing a clean shirt. "Miss Hale," he said, "I was not sure you would come." She answered honestly, "I ran out of better options." He almost smiled. "I appreciate that." Ethan pulled a marriage certificate from his saddlebag. "I had a circuit preacher draw this up. He's waiting about a quarter-mile up the trail. If you are still willing, we can make it legal." This was her last chance to turn around. She thought of her sick father and her worried mother. She thought of the debt that would ruin them. She thought of Ethan, a stranger who offered a way out. "I am willing," she said. The ceremony was quick, lasting less than 5 minutes. She repeated words she hardly heard. The preacher signed, Ethan signed, and then he handed the pen to Lydia. Her hand was steady as she wrote her old name for the very last time. Just like that, she was Lydia Crow. "How long?" she asked. 2 days, if the weather holds," Ethan said. 3 if it doesn't." When she asked where they were headed, he just said, "North. For now, I just need you to trust me, Mrs. Crow." That new name still felt strange on her tongue. "I can try." She turned her horse away from the only life she had ever known and did not look back. As they rode, she watched him. The man was no simple mountain man. He sat a horse like he was born on it, and his eyes missed nothing, constantly scanning the woods with a practiced vigilance. By the time they set up camp, Lydia was certain. This man was more than he appeared. He built their shelter with an expert speed, and the rabbit they ate for dinner appeared from his saddlebag already cleaned. She had not even heard a shot. "You know your way around horses," he noted, watching her tend to them. "My father taught me how to work and how to survive," she replied. Later by the fire, he told her to get some sleep. "I'll keep watch," he said. "It is an old habit." When she asked from what, he just gave her a hard look. The mountains do not care if you are tired. The next day's climb was much harder. The trail shrank to a narrow ledge on the side of a cliff with a dizzying drop just inches away. "Trust your horse," Ethan called back. "Look where you're going, not where you might fall." Just when Lydia thought she could not go any higher, the path opened onto a high plateau. Below them, tucked between snow-dusted peaks, was a hidden valley. It was a place that should not exist, complete with buildings nestled in the pines. Ethan stopped his horse beside hers. "Welcome home, Mrs. Crow." She stared, realizing her poor husband was not poor at all. The ride down into the valley was more nerve-wracking than the climb up. This was no hermit's hideaway. The road was maintained, the trees grew in managed rows, and a stone-lined creek was built to mask any sound. The whole valley, maybe 2 miles across and 5 miles long, felt deliberate. It was not just hidden. It was a fortress. Lydia watched Ethan watching her, as if judging her reaction. "How long have you lived here?" she finally asked. "On and off for 5 years," he replied, his tone ending the subject. But her unease only grew. "Ethan," she said, pulling her horse to a stop, "what is this place?" "Valley." His gray eyes were locked on her, serious as a heart attack. "It's a complicated life," he finally said, "but it's an honest one. I need you to hold on to your questions for just another hour, Lydia." "That's the best I can do for now. It wasn't nearly enough, but it would have to be." She just nodded, and they kept riding. The settlement didn't jump out at you. It just sort of unfolded as they rounded a curve in the valley. First, she saw a massive, well-kept barn. Then came another, a stable, a workshop with smoke curling from its chimney, and a big storehouse. Finally, sitting on a small rise, was the lodge itself. Lydia's breath hitched. This wasn't some fancy city mansion, but it was solid and grand in a way that made a liar out of everything Ethan had told her. It was 2 stories of heavy timber with a porch that wrapped all the way around. As they got closer, she saw folks moving about. A man came out of the workshop. A couple of women carried baskets. They all stopped and stared when they saw Ethan, their surprise turning into pure relief. "Mr. Crow," the man called out, built tough like a blacksmith. "We weren't expecting you for another week." "Plans changed, Samuel." Ethan swung down from his horse and then turned to help Lydia. His hands were on her waist for just a second, but every single worker saw it. You could see the questions popping up in their eyes. "This here is my wife," Ethan announced to the quiet crowd. "Lydia Crow. She'll be living here now. I expect y'all to make her feel welcome." The silence that followed was heavy enough to sink a boat. Samuel's eyebrows shot up to his hairline. Then an older woman with a kind, weathered face and gray hair broke into a slow smile. "Well now," she said, walking right up with her hand out. "That's news worth celebrating. Welcome, Mrs. Crow. I'm Martha Hayes, the housekeeper. It's been all men around here for far too long." Lydia shook her firm hand. "Thank you. Though I'm not exactly sure what I'm being welcomed to." Martha gave Ethan a look that was half scolding and half amusement. "Don't you mind him. He's never been one for explanations. Come on, dear. Let's get you inside and settled. The men can handle the horses." As Martha led her toward the heavy oak door of the lodge, Lydia glanced back. Ethan was just watching them, his face impossible to read. The inside was just as impressive as the outside, with a huge stone fireplace and comfortable furniture that looked well used and well loved. Martha led her past grand fireplaces and walls of books into a house bigger than any Lydia had ever seen. The housekeeper opened a door upstairs, saying, "This will be your room." It was enormous, with a fancy bed and its own private washroom. Martha pointed to a pump by the sink. "We have running cold water. That door connects to Mr. Crow's room, but it locks from your side. Your privacy is respected here." Lydia walked to the window, looking down at a whole village of barns and workshops sealed off by the mountains. "How many folks live here?" she asked. "About 20 in the winter, more in the summer," Martha replied. "We are mostly self-sufficient. It is a good life, just a bit cut off." Lydia finally asked, "What is this place?" Martha gave a kind smile. "That is for Mr. Crow to tell you. But I will say, whatever you are worried about, the truth is likely not as bad as the story you are telling yourself." Just then, a knock came at the door. It was Ethan. Martha slipped out, leaving Lydia alone with her new husband. He had cleaned up and changed his shirt, looking less like a mountain man and more like a stranger in a suit of armor. "I figure you have some questions," he said. "That does not even begin to cover it," she replied. "Then ask. I promised you an hour." Lydia turned to face him. "What is this place?" "It is a timber operation," he said flatly. "My family owns the rights to most of the lumber in these mountains." Lydia felt a flash of anger. "Your family? You told me you were a poor man." "I never said that," Ethan corrected her. "You assumed. I did not correct you because I needed to know if you would marry me for who I am, not for what I have." "So it was a test?" she demanded. "You let me believe I was selling myself for a life of poverty just to see if I was good enough?" "No," he shot back. "I never lied. I offered you money to save your family and a home with food and shelter. I just did not tell you the whole truth." Lydia wanted to argue, but she knew he was right. If a rich man had shown up at her cabin, she would have run him off with her father's rifle. "So you deceived me," she said. "I gave you a choice you could believe in," he answered. "Everything else is just extra." "And what do you get out of this?" Lydia asked. Ethan looked out the window. "My father built this place. When he died 3 years ago, he left it all to me. But our business partners and investors do not trust me. They think I'm too young." "What does that have to do with me?" she asked. "Appearances," he said, finally looking at her. "A married man looks stable, committed. I needed a partner, not some hired actress. I needed someone from the mountains who would not be easily impressed or intimidated. I needed someone tough enough to choose survival over pride. You do not know me, Lydia said. How could you know I was any of those things? Oh, but I do, he said quietly. I watched you for 3 weeks before I ever spoke to you. The words hung in the air. You what? I had to be certain, he confessed. I watched how you cared for your family, how you handled the pity from your neighbors, and how you kept your home running on pure grit. Lydia felt a storm of anger and flattery. You spied on me. I did my research, he countered. There is a difference. Not from where I am standing, she said, taking a step back. What other surprises are waiting for me? Probably several, he admitted. But I will make you a promise. I will not lie to you. If you ask me a direct question, I will give you a direct answer. Can you live with that? Lydia thought for a moment. It was more honesty than most wives got. I want that in writing, she declared. An agreement. A real smile finally broke across Ethan's face. All right. What are your terms? First, honesty when I ask, she said. Second, my own money, an allowance that is mine to do with as I please. Third, the freedom to write to my family and to visit them. And fourth, she took a breath, this marriage is a partnership in name only. This is a partnership, not an ownership. You don't own me, Ethan. He didn't even hesitate. Agreed. Anything else? Not yet, she said. I'm sure I'll have more questions once I figure out what's really going on here. I'm sure you will, he said, and then paused at the door. For what it's worth, Lydia, I'm glad you came. We'd better hope it works out, she replied. I just gave up my whole world based on that idea. After he left, Lydia felt the day's exhaustion hit her all at once. She sank onto the bed, which was softer than any she'd ever known. She could hear the normal sounds of work starting up again outside. She had married a complete stranger to save her family, but that stranger was turning out to be a whole lot more than she bargained for. A soft knock came at the door. It was Martha carrying a tray with a teapot. Figured you might want some tea, she said, and maybe a few answers to questions you haven't even thought of yet. I'm not sure I can handle any more surprises today, Lydia admitted. Oh, nothing dramatic, dear, just the practical stuff. They sat together by the window as Martha poured the tea, adding plenty of milk and sugar to Lydia's cup without even asking. Mr. Crow is a good man, Martha began, but he has been alone for a very long time. He learned early to keep his business to himself and to assume everyone wants a piece of what he's got. That sounds like a lonely way to live, Lydia said. It is, but it has kept him safe. There are plenty of folks, even some family, who would take advantage of him if they could. When he said he was going to find a wife, I worried he would come back with a fortune hunter. Martha took a sip of her tea. I'm mighty glad he came back with you instead. You can't know that. You just met me. I know you asked for terms instead of promises, Martha said. And I know you're sitting here planning your next move instead of crying about your situation. That tells me you're a practical woman, and practical is exactly what this place and that man needs. Why are you telling me all this? Lydia asked. Because I've watched that man carry burdens that would break most people. I would like to see him have a partner instead of another weight to carry. The choice is yours, Mrs. Crow. What if I choose to leave? Then you leave, Martha said simply. Mr. Crow would honor his word and see that your family is taken care of. But I surely hope you will stay. There is a real place for you here if you want it. Lydia felt like she had been sold to settle a family debt. But that evening, a young woman named Anne brought hot water for a bath, a small kindness in a strange and imposing new world. Later, downstairs, the main room was full of men who worked for her new husband. Ethan stood and made the introductions, short and simple. There was Samuel, the foreman. Then came James and Robert, two brothers who ran the logging crews. Everyone was polite enough, but Lydia could feel their eyes on her, sizing up the boss's unexpected wife. She knew right then she would have to earn her place here. During a quiet moment at dinner, Lydia asked how much timber they processed in a year. The table fell silent. Every man looked to Ethan. He gave a slight nod. "Roughly 500,000 board feet," he said, his voice calm. Lydia then asked what happened in the winter. Ethan's face grew serious. "This year," he said slowly, "we have some other challenges to address." A sudden tension filled the room. "What kind of challenges?" Lydia pressed, ignoring the warning signs. "Business," he said, his tone firm but polite. "Nothing for you to worry about tonight." The dismissal stung. It was a clear signal to stay out of his affairs. Later that night, alone in a massive, cold room, Lydia stared into the darkness. She was a stranger here, married to a man she barely knew, but she refused to be a fragile decoration. The next few days, she learned the layout of the valley from the horse barn to the supply sheds. She made a point to learn names and ask questions about the work. She was determined to understand this place. She was determined to be more than just Mrs. Crow, the woman who had been bought and paid for. 4 days later, a rider galloped into the yard. He carried a sealed letter from Denver. Ethan came out from his office to meet him. As he read the message, Lydia saw his whole body tense up, his jaw set like stone. "Tell my uncle I will be there in 1 week," Ethan told the rider, his voice low. "And tell him my answer has not changed." When the rider was gone, Lydia asked if it was bad news. Ethan looked at her, his eyes dark with trouble. "It's complicated," he said, "and it involves you. Come inside. It is time you understood what you have married into." "My father had 2 brothers," Ethan explained, his voice low. "William passed on young, but Marcus is still around, and he's got his eye on what he thinks is his piece of the family business." He tossed a letter on his desk. "When Pop left it all to me, Marcus fought the will and lost, but he never let it go. He wants control, money, and to settle old scores. Now he's called a big meeting in Denver with all our investors. He plans to accuse me of running the place into the ground. It is set for 10 days from now. I need you there with me, Lydia. A man with a wife looks a sight more stable. Marcus wants to question my judgment, and I aim to show him I build partnerships. It's your choice. I am asking for your help as my husband and as your partner." Lydia thought about their strange arrangement, about the man standing before her. She was either an obligation or a partner. "All right, Ethan, I'll go," she said. "But you tell me everything, no more surprises." A look of relief crossed his face. "Deal," he said. "We'll start tomorrow." The next morning, his office looked like a war room. Maps and ledgers covered a large table. "This here is the Crow timber operation," Ethan began, pointing to a huge map. It showed logging sites and properties spread all across the territory. "My father built this from nothing but a borrowed wagon and 30 years of hard work. Now it's the biggest independent timber outfit west of Denver." "How many folks work for you?" Lydia asked, trying to grasp the sheer size of it all. "About 200 directly," he answered. "Another 300 or so depend on our contracts to make a living." "And your uncle wants all this?" "He wants a piece of it," Ethan corrected. "Thinks being family entitles him to it, even though he never lifted a finger to help build it. My father cut him out of the will for a good reason. Marcus has a bad gambling habit. Pop bailed him out twice, but the second time he said that was the last. Marcus is using this meeting to make me look bad in front of our main investors. If they get spooked, he could force his way in. Once he gets his hands on the money, he'll bleed this company dry in 2 years flat. Harrison Wells runs the big railroad, and he needs our timber for his tracks. He's an old-school fellow who values stability above all else. Then you have Margaret Chen, who supplies the mines. She is sharp as a tack and cares about competence, not talk. If she thinks you know your business, she will back you. Finally, Richard Blackwood. He speaks for a group of city investors. They are looking for the next big thing and are quick to jump on an opportunity, but they will bolt at the first sign of trouble. So, Lydia said, Wells wants safety, Chen wants smarts, and Blackwood wants a quick profit. Your Uncle Marcus will paint you as a risky, foolish, dead-end investment. Ethan looked at her surprised. That is it, exactly. I spent 5 years watching my daddy deal with buyers, she explained. You learn what folks want and what scares them. Ethan sighed. He will say I am too young, that I am ruining my father's good name, and that my new ways are reckless. I have been giving the men better pay and safer gear, and logging in a way that lets the forest grow back. The old-timers do not like it. They say I am choosing trees over money. I am choosing a future over a quick buck. My father built this company, but he nearly broke it. I am trying to build something that will last. Lydia saw Ethan in a new light. He was not just some rich man with ideas. He was fighting for something he believed in. Your uncle will twist that, she warned. He will call it weakness. I know, Ethan said, pulling out a stack of ledgers. That is why I need to show them the proof. The numbers do not lie. But Marcus is a smooth talker. He can make a profit look like a loss. Then do not argue with him, Lydia said, pulling up a chair. Make your case so strong that he looks like a fool for even questioning it. Now show me these numbers. For hours they pored over the books. By the time evening came, Lydia understood the timber business inside and out. You are a quick study, Ethan said, impressed. I have a stake in this now, too, she replied, rubbing her eyes. She paused. Ethan, why did you really need a wife for this meeting? He hesitated. Marcus was spreading rumors. He told folks I was too odd to ever find a wife, that no decent woman would have me. It was a way to make me look unstable and unreliable. To my uncle, this marriage is just another business deal he can criticize. He thinks I am weak, but bringing you as my wife proves him dead wrong. It shows I am building a future, not just sitting on a legacy. We set off for Denver before the sun was up. A hard 4-day ride by horse and stagecoach. Lydia wore her best blue dress, a good traveling coat, and a hat that had likely belonged to my mother. The stagecoach was a rough and crowded affair. Lydia was squeezed between me and a fidgety family, but she never complained. Instead, she just watched and listened to everything. She soaked in how folks talked, how they sized each other up, how business and gossip moved up and down the road. During one stop, I told her, "You sure are quiet." She looked at me and said, "I am listening." It is amazing what folks will say when they think no one important is around. I had to smile. I was beginning to see I had misjudged this woman. She just replied, "Most people do. I use it to my advantage." Denver was a shock after the quiet mountains, a bustling city with paved streets and tall buildings. We checked into the finest hotel in the city, the Windsor. The moment I signed my name, the clerk's whole attitude changed. "Mr. Crow," he said, "we have your usual suite ready." He eyed Lydia with curiosity. "Should I get another room for Mrs. Crow?" I put my hand on my wife's back. "The suite is just fine," I told him smoothly. Inside, our rooms had a sitting area and a real private bath. The bedrooms had locks on the inside, and I made sure Lydia knew it. "You will have your privacy," I promised her. "This is a partnership, not ownership. That deal stands no matter where we are." To my surprise, she looked like she believed me. Before the big meeting, I took Lydia to a dressmaker. I bought her 3 proper city dresses, the kind that make a statement. "This is not just cloth," I told her as she was being fitted. "This is armor. My uncle will try to make you feel small. Do not give him the chance." The night before the meeting, my lawyer, Lawrence Porter, came to the hotel. For 3 hours, we planned for every argument my uncle might make. Lydia sat quietly in a corner, taking in every single word. Porter said, "The trick is to stay on offense. Do not let Marcus put you on the defensive." Then Lydia spoke up for the first time. "What about when he makes it personal?" Both of us turned to look at her. "My uncle has been questioning my husband's character," she said, her voice steady. "Those are not business arguments. They are attacks." Porter looked at me and I nodded. She was right. "Then do not answer them," Lydia said plainly. "Acknowledge him, then turn right back to business. Every time he gets personal, you give him a business fact. It will make him look petty." Porter just stared at her for a second. Then a slow grin spread across his face. "Mrs. Crow," he said, "has anyone ever told you that you should have been a lawyer?" She shook her head. No, but I know how to handle a bully. After the lawyer left, I poured us both a glass of whiskey. I am not much of a drinker, Lydia said. Neither am I admitted. But tonight, I reckon we have earned it. I raised my glass. To tomorrow? She touched her glass to mine. A comfortable quiet settled between us. Are you worried? She asked. Less than I was before you got here, I told her honestly. Then I asked, do you regret agreeing to this? She thought for a long moment about the life she had left and the one she had just stepped into. Ask me again in a week, she finally said, after we see how tomorrow goes. For the first time in a long while, I let out a real laugh. We were two strangers, ready to walk into a fight together. The next morning, we walked up the steps of the business office, a big stone building meant to intimidate. Inside, the air was thick with tension and cigar smoke, and there was Marcus holding court like he already owned the place. When he saw me, he smirked. Nephew, he called out. Glad you could make it. I was starting to think you forgot. I kept my voice calm. We are 10 minutes early, Marcus. Well, look what the cat dragged in, Marcus said, his voice slick as oil. You are late, Ethan. We keep a different kind of time up on the mountain, Ethan replied calmly. Marcus's eyes landed on Lydia. And who is this pretty little thing? This is my wife, Lydia. Lydia, my uncle, Marcus Crow. A pleasure, Mr. Crow, Lydia said, offering a steady hand. He held it just a little too long. A wife? Well, now that is news. This all happened mighty fast, did it not? We like our privacy, Ethan said. I am sure you do, Marcus smirked. So, tell me, dear, how long have you known my nephew? Long enough to know he is a good man, Mr. Crow. And is not that what truly matters? Marcus's smile tightened. He knew she would not be easily handled. Just then, a man called the meeting to order. They all took their seats. At the head of the table sat the three investors, looking like judges. There was Harrison Wells, a man who looked like he was carved from stone. Beside him, Margaret Chen, who watched everything with sharp, intelligent eyes, and Richard Blackwood, who fidgeted like a man whose pockets were on fire. Marcus stood up to speak, his face a mask of false concern. Thank you, Commissioner. My brother built Crow Timber from scratch into the finest outfit in this territory. 3 years ago, he left it all to his boy, my nephew Ethan. I thought it was the right call then, but I have watched as poor judgment has started to tear down everything my brother built. The commissioner called that a serious claim and asked for specifics. I can give them to you. First, his new logging practices have hurt our profits. Second, his soft-hearted notions have run off old business partners. Third, he has made no move to grow the company. And finally, my nephew has proven he just can't handle the duties that come with running a major business. The commissioner asked what I proposed. It is simple. I should be made managing partner. Ethan can keep his share, but a man with more experience needs to steer the ship. The room fell quiet. The commissioner turned to Ethan. Mr. Crow, care to respond? I would. Ethan stood tall, looking more like a boss than a quiet mountain man. My uncle is right that I've made changes. What he calls lost profits, I call sustainability. We're cutting less, but we're leaving the land healthy for the future. In 10 years, when other folks have stripped their land bare, we will still be in business. A man named Richard Blackwood asked if he could prove that. I can show you the numbers. Ethan presented a ledger. Our profit margins are down 3%, but our costs are down 7%. That means our net profit is actually up 4%. And we have stretched our harvesting timeline from 15 years to 40. Margaret Chen leaned in, impressed. Do you have contracts to back that up? I do, ma'am, including yours. We have delivered every order on time for 3 years straight, and our quality has only gotten better. Chen nodded. Marcus jumped back in. That does not matter if you have ruined our business relationships. Wells, tell them about our argument last year. Wells looked uncomfortable. We had a disagreement on pricing. A disagreement my nephew refused to settle reasonably, Marcus cut in. Actually, Wells said, young Mr. Crow was right. My first offer would have been good for me, but bad for the company. He found a way that was fair to us both, and I took it. Marcus's jaw went tight. The fact remains that his judgment is poor, including his sudden marriage to a woman nobody knows, from a background we know nothing about. All eyes turned to me. This was the personal attack we expected. Ethan started to talk, but I put a hand on his arm and stood up myself. Mr. Crow, you are right that nobody here knows my background. So allow me to tell you. I come from a poor mountain settlement. My family lost everything because of medical bills. When your nephew offered marriage, I said yes. I needed to save my family, and he needed a wife who understood what it means to survive. It was a business arrangement, which I figure you, of all people, should respect. Marcus just stared, caught off guard. As for my place here, I've spent the last week learning this business inside and out. I can talk about profits, logging, and contracts as well as anyone in this room. Not because I had fancy schooling, but because I know that being ignorant is a luxury I cannot afford. I have as much at stake here as anyone. You question my background, Mr. Crow. Well, I question why you are really here. This meeting is not about the business. It is about you being bitter that your nephew succeeded where you failed. The room was dead silent. Margaret Chen spoke up calmly. Mr. Marcus Crow, what is your business experience, other than being related to the founder? I have been involved in several ventures, all of which failed, Ethan said quietly. My father bailed you out twice, Uncle. The second time he made it clear there would not be a third. That is why he left you out of the will. He knew you would destroy everything he built. That is a lie. It is on paper. Ethan held up another folder. My lawyer has the records of both bailouts. We can review them right now if you like. Marcus's confidence finally broke. And solid business sense. What else is there to say? Wells nodded. I agree completely. Our arrangement stands. Mrs. Chen, a sharp lady, gave a small smile. I am more than satisfied. I'm impressed with your skills and your choice in a wife, Mr. Blackwood. The younger man had been watching Lydia. I came here expecting a mess. Instead, I found a forward-thinking, respectable operation. That's what we want to see. He stood and shook Ethan's hand. Count me in on your expansion. Marcus saw it was all over. This is a joke. You are all being fooled. In 5 years, Ethan's voice cut like steel, we will still be here running an honest business. You, Uncle Marcus, will have to pay your gambling debt some other way. The words struck Marcus hard and his face turned pale. You have no right. I have every right. This is my company. Ethan turned to the commissioner. Are we done here? The official looked around. It seems your concerns have been answered, Mr. Crow. The investors are happy. Without real proof of wrongdoing, I see no reason to step in. Marcus just stood there for a second, then stormed out of the room, his 2 friends trailing behind him, looking embarrassed. After they were gone, the room felt lighter. The investors congratulated Ethan and talked about future deals. Margaret Chen took Lydia aside. That was very well played, she said softly. Marcus thought you would be a pushover. Instead, you showed everyone he was the fool. Lydia just shrugged. I only told the truth. The right truth at the right time is a powerful thing, Mrs. Chen said, handing her a business card. Don't ever forget that. I would like to speak with you and your husband soon. Go celebrate. You have earned it. When everyone was finally gone, Ethan looked at Lydia. You did not have to defend me like that. Yes, I did. We are partners, aren't we? That means we fight our battles together. He looked at her for a long time. I really misjudged you, he said at last. I thought I just needed someone capable. What I got was someone truly special. Lydia blushed. Do not make me into something I am not. I just said what needed to be said. That is exactly what special people do, he replied, offering his arm. Now, I promised you a celebration. As they walked out into the Denver sun, Lydia felt a heavy weight lift from her shoulders. They had won. They proved that a girl from the mountains could stand tall in a room full of powerful men. As Ethan led her to the finest restaurant in the city, she knew things had changed. They were not just business partners anymore. They were building a real team, based on respect. The marriage started as a deal, but it was growing into something real, was turning into something worth fighting for. The celebration dinner was perfect. Good food, fine wine, and a quiet table where they could finally relax. But then a messenger delivered an envelope with a red wax seal. Ethan's face grew grim as he read it. "What is it?" Lydia asked. "It's an invitation," he said, passing it to her. "From my Aunt Caroline, Marcus's wife. A dinner party tomorrow night to welcome you to the family." Lydia read the fancy handwriting. "This feels like a trap." "It is," Ethan said. "Marcus lost, but Caroline is dangerous in her own way. She moves in circles he can't." He tapped his fingers on the table. "She will try to find a weakness in you." "Should we say no?" "That would look like we are scared," he said, meeting her eyes. "She would tell everyone my mountain wife is not fit for polite company." "Then we will go," Lydia said, her voice firm. "You taught me the timber business. How hard can one little dinner party be?" Ethan's smile was thin. "You would be surprised." The next day, Ethan bought Lydia a beautiful evening gown of deep green silk. It cost more than her father made in a whole year. A woman from the dress shop showed her how to walk and sit in it. "Remember," Ethan told her, "Caroline will try to make you feel small. She will ask tricky questions about where you came from. So what should I do?" "Just be yourself," he answered. The woman who faced down Marcus did not apologize for who she was. "Do not start now." That night, Lydia looked at herself in the mirror. The woman staring back seemed like a stranger in her fancy dress and borrowed jewels. But underneath it all, she was still the same person who had scrubbed floors and fought off debt collectors. She touched the small cameo at her neck, the one piece that was her own mother's. It was a reminder of her roots. "Never forget," she whispered to a reflection. The Crow Mansion in Denver was a massive stone house with gas lamps lighting the long driveway. Carriages were lined up, dropping off finely dressed guests. "I thought you said this was a small family dinner," Lydia remarked as they waited their turn. "Carolyn's idea of small is different from ours," Ethan said, helping her out of the carriage. "Stay with me. If someone bothers you, I will handle it." "I can handle myself." "I know," he said softly, "but you do not have to do it alone anymore." The house was filled with at least 40 people, all looking wealthy and sure of themselves. A string quartet was playing. Caroline Crow came toward them right away. She was about 45, with a perfect smile that never quite reached her eyes. "Ethan, darling," Caroline said, her diamonds sparkling. "So glad you could make it. And this must be your bride." Her eyes raked over Lydia. "What a charming little dress. Very rustic." "Thank you," Lydia replied smoothly. "I find good taste lasts longer than trends." Caroline's smile tightened. "How philosophical. Where are you from, dear?" "Your family name escapes me." "A small mountain settlement. You wouldn't have heard of it." "How quaint. And your father?" "He was a rancher," Lydia said, the half-truth coming easily. "He passed after our wedding." "My condolences," Caroline said with zero sympathy. Just then, a woman in a loud purple dress arrived. "Caroline, you must introduce me to the talk of the town." "Of course. Lydia Crow, this is Helena Ashford." Helena looked Lydia over. "So you're the one who finally caught Ethan Crow. How on earth did you manage that?" "I didn't manage a thing. He asked, and I said yes." "Surely there is more to it than that." Lydia felt the room lean in, waiting. This was a trap. "It was a practical arrangement," she said clearly. "He needed a wife who understands mountain life, and I needed security. We were honest about it. I find honesty is a lot more romantic than pretty lies." A deep silence fell over the room. Then Helena let out a genuine belly laugh. "Well, I'll be. An honest woman in Denver." "Caroline, where did you find her?" Caroline's face was a stone mask. "Dinner is served," she announced. The dining room was a palace, with a long table set with crystal that cost more than Lydia's whole town. A place card put her between a banker, Mr. Whitmore, and a mining magnate's wife, Mrs. Patricia Newcomb. Ethan was seated clear across the room, too far to be any help. Oysters on ice arrived. Lydia had never seen one before. She carefully watched her neighbors to see what to do. Mrs. Newcomb noticed. "First time, dear?" she asked kindly. "They are an acquired taste." Lydia tried one. The texture was strange, but she found the salty taste interesting. "It is different, but not bad." "A very diplomatic answer," Mrs. Newcomb smiled. "You should know these dinners are designed to make outsiders feel small. It is Caroline's specialty." "I appreciate the warning." "Think nothing of it," she whispered. "The secret is most of these folks are just as scared as you are. They're just better at faking it." The table talk was all about Paris fashions and gossip Lydia didn't understand. She stayed quiet and listened. Then the banker, Mr. Whitmore, turned to her. "Mrs. Crow, you are from the mountains. Denver must be quite a shock after such a simple upbringing." The question was a clear insult. "Denver is impressive," Lydia said, "but I would not call mountain life simple. Surviving up there requires skills in medicine, construction, and managing resources. That is sophisticated knowledge most city folks would not last a day without." "Are you saying city people are less capable?" Mr. Whitmore huffed. "I am saying different places require different skills. You are an expert at navigating banks. I am an expert at surviving when there are no banks. Neither is better. They are just different." Several people nodded in agreement, but Caroline was not done. As the main course was served, she called down the table. "Lydia, dear, I am curious. What sort of education does one receive in a mountain settlement?" The table went quiet. This was the real attack. Lydia met her gaze. "I had 6 years of formal schooling. After that, my father taught me from his books, and my mother taught me business." "So you can read and write," Carolyn pressed on. "But surely Ethan's business must be too complex for you." "Is it?" Lydia asked calmly. "It took me a week to learn the entire timber operation. The contracts, the profit margins, all of it. If it only took a week to understand, how complicated could it be?" Someone down the table choked back a laugh. Carolyn's face turned pink. "Understanding and managing are two very different things," she snapped. "True. Ethan manages the operation. I support him. It is called a partnership, Mrs. Crow. It is how most successful marriages work." A woman next to Caroline spoke up. "That sounds remarkably sensible." Furious, Carolyn turned away and pointedly ignored Lydia for the rest of the meal. Mrs. Newcomb leaned in close one last time. "You just made a powerful enemy." "She was my enemy the moment I walked in," Lydia whispered back. "At least now she knows I am not an easy one." I found myself surrounded by women asking questions, some curious, some just digging for gossip. "Is it true you married him after only 1 day?" one asked. "It is true we married fast, but we were honest about what we both needed. I think that is more important than a long courtship based on fantasy. But how can you love a man you barely know?" I never said I loved him. Love takes time. Right now we are building respect and a partnership. That is a stronger foundation than some passing fancy, don't you think? An older woman with sharp eyes studied me. "You are very honest, Mrs. Crow. Most brides pretend to be madly in love." I was raised to believe that lies, even the polite kind, cause more trouble than they're worth. If folks think less of me for being honest, that says more about them than it does me. The older woman smiled. "I like you. You remind me of me 40 years ago." She held out her hand. "I am Margaret Chen. We met at the meeting." "Mrs. Chen, I did not expect to see you here. I came tonight just to meet you proper. You did well at that meeting, but I wanted to see how you handled a different kind of fight. You have good instincts. You do not apologize for who you are. That will serve you well." Margaret looked around. "Most of these women would crumble if they had to live your life. They think privilege is strength. You have the real thing. Thank you. That means a lot. I suspect I know just how much." Margaret lowered her voice. "I meant what I said at the meeting. I have a business proposition for you and Ethan. Come to my office tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Before I could answer, Caroline, Ethan's aunt, appeared. "Mrs. Chen, so glad you could make it. Very much so. Your new niece is a delight. I see why Ethan married her." Caroline's smile was pure ice. How wonderful. Though I am surprised Ethan did not choose someone from his own circle, someone with a more appropriate background. "Appropriate for what?" Margaret asked. "Ethan needs a partner, not a pretty ornament for parties. Mrs. Crow seems perfect for the job." "Of course you would think so, coming from trade yourself," Caroline started, then realized her mistake. Margaret's eyes went cold. "Yes, I come from trade. So does your nephew. The only difference is I do not pretend my money makes me better than people who actually work for a living." She turned to me. "It was a pleasure, my dear. I will see you tomorrow at 10. "I will be there," I said. Margaret swept away, leaving Caroline furious. The party could not end soon enough. In the carriage home, I felt a kind of tired that hard work never gave me. "How bad was it?" Ethan asked. Caroline tried to make me feel small and out of place. I refused to play her game. "I do not think she liked that one bit. I saw Margaret Chen talking to you. What did she want?" "Ethan," she asked as the carriage rattled along, "are all your get-togethers like that? Folks just attacking each other with fancy words?" "Only the ones with my family," he said with a tired sigh. "It is draining. I would rather wrestle a steer than go through that again," Lydia admitted. He chuckled softly. "You handled yourself just fine. I think you even rattled Caroline a bit. Mrs. Chen was a surprise, though. She was kind." "Margaret does not waste her time on people she does not respect," Ethan explained. "Her taking a liking to you is a very good sign." He paused. "Lydia, I know this is more than you bargained for. We are a team now," she reminded him. "We face what comes, together." He reached across the carriage in the darkness and took her hand. His grip was warm and steady. "Thank you," he said, his voice low, "for not running." "Where would I go?" she said with a small smile. "Besides, I am too stubborn to let a woman like Caroline Crow win." They rode the rest of the way in a comfortable silence, a new kind of partnership forming between them. Margaret Chen's office was not fancy. It was a place for getting work done, with a big desk and maps covering the walls. "I do not care about expensive furniture," she said, getting straight to the point. "I'd rather put my money into things that make a return." Margaret Chen's office was simple, a surprise given her wealth. "Let me be plain," she said, pouring tea. "I was impressed with you two at that meeting. You don't just work together, you collaborate." Ethan looked interested. "I'm not sure where you're going with this. I own mines, good ones, but I have the same problem you do. My foremen want to rip everything out of the ground as fast as they can. I want to build something that lasts. I need advisors who understand that, people who can balance profit with preservation." Margaret looked at them both. "I want to hire you as consultants. You'd review my operations and help me make them sustainable. The pay would be good." "Why both of us?" Ethan asked. "Because you're the business expert, Mr. Crow," she said. "But your wife understands something just as important. She understands survival. And that is exactly what my business needs." Mrs. Crow smiled at Lydia. "I do not offer opportunities like this lightly. I see great potential in you. You have courage and a sharp mind. This territory needs more people like you." Lydia felt a warmth spread through her chest. It was the feeling of being seen for who she really was. On the walk back to the hotel, Ethan asked, "So, what do you think?" Lydia took a deep breath. "I think I am terrified and excited all at once. I do not know if I can do what she is asking." "You can," he said, his voice certain. "I watched you learn my whole business in a week. I watched you stand up to Caroline without flinching. Yes, Lydia, I believe you are capable of this. The only question is, do you believe it?" "I want to try," she said at last. "I need to see what happens when I stop holding myself back." Ethan gave her a genuine warm smile. "Good," he said, "because I want us to take Margaret's offer as real partners, as equals." They came back to the valley 3 days later, carrying new contracts and a new understanding. The clean mountain air felt good. And when Martha met them with a hot meal, Lydia felt like she was truly home. Later that evening, Ethan found her on the porch. "A month ago," she said. "I never could have imagined this." He looked at her for a long moment. "Lydia, I know this started as just business, but I hope it can become something more, if you're willing." Her heart started to beat a little faster. It was not love, not yet, but it was a strong foundation. "I'm willing," she answered. "Let's see what we can build together." Lydia had shown up in these mountains with no other choices, just trying to get by. Now she was shaping her own future. For the first time, she truly believed she could handle whatever life threw at her. That winter hit with a fury. A huge snowstorm in late October dropped 2 feet of powder on the valley, cutting them off from the rest of the world. But it finally felt like home. She knew the work, the people, and the pace of the place. A knock came on the connecting door to Ethan's room, a door that had been opening more often lately. He walked in holding a telegram, his face serious. "This is from your mother," he said. Her hands trembled as she took it. The message was brief. "Father passed peacefully." The telegram also said, "Debts cleared. Thank you, a letter is coming. Mother." It brought a strange mix of sadness and relief. Her father was gone, but at least he had died without the weight of his debts. "I'm so sorry, Lydia," Ethan said quietly. "Do you want to try and go to her? We could make it through the passes." She shook her head, feeling certain in her choice. "No, Mom has the money to manage, and she is safe. My place is here now." A letter arrived 2 weeks later. Her mother wrote that her father had been proud of the choice she made. The money had settled everything, and he passed away in his sleep. "Don't you grieve too hard," her mother wrote. "He was tired of fighting. Go build your new life. That is what he would have wanted for you." Lydia allowed herself to cry for her father and for the person she used to be. Then she dried her eyes and went downstairs to work. With the valley snowed in, 23 people were living in close quarters until the spring thaw. Lydia discovered she was good at keeping things running smoothly. She kept everyone fed, busy, and getting along. "You have a real gift for managing folks," Martha told her one night. "It just seems like common sense," Lydia said. "Well, common sense is not so common," Martha replied with a smile. Ethan saw it as well. He began to include her in every important decision for the operation. Their evening meetings became about more than just ledgers and plans. It was a real partnership now, and something more was growing between them. The small things, like his hand on her back or their fingers brushing over paperwork, said everything that they had not yet spoken. One night by the fire, Lydia asked about his mother. Ethan looked into the flames. "Her heart gave out when I was just 12. She was a kind woman, always reading to me." He paused. "My father, he taught me everything about running timber, but nothing about being a man. After she was gone, I was just another piece of the business." Lydia watched him. "Is that why you came up here, to get away?" "Partly," he admitted. "Then I realized I was just hiding. That is when I went looking for you." She shook her head gently. "You were not hiding, Ethan. You were getting ready." A warm silence settled between them. Respect had turned into trust, and trust was becoming something much deeper, something real. "Ethan," she said softly, "this arrangement of ours, it is not what we planned." He reached over and took her hand, his grip firm and sure. "No, it is a whole lot better. I was becoming someone better than I ever thought I could be. I figured I was just trading one hard life for another, but instead I found my purpose." She hesitated, then added, "And I found someone worth building a life with." Ethan stood, pulling her up with him, and gave her their first real kiss. It wasn't for show, but was tender and full of promise. When he pulled away, Lydia was breathless. "That was overdue," Ethan admitted. "I've wanted to do that for weeks." "Then why did not you?" "I wanted you to be sure," he said, "to choose me with no strings attached. I choose you, Lydia said, her voice firm. Not because I have to, but because I want to. Outside, the winter wind howled, but inside, Lydia had never felt safer. When the spring thaw finally came, it brought challenges like flooded roads and broken equipment. It also brought Margaret Chen, who arrived with her surveyors ready to work. "This is quite an operation," she said from the porch. "There is an honesty to it you just do not find in the city." Over the next week, they toured the timber sites. Lydia found herself speaking up more than she expected, seeing things in her own way. "Here is what I do not get," she said, looking over a logged patch of land. "You both want the most value from each site, but what about the value of the land itself? You clear-cut a forest and you have lost its future value for good." "That is the sustainability argument," Ethan replied. "But investors want their money now, not in 20 years. Then show them what it costs them down the road," Lydia insisted. "This section here will be ready to harvest again in 15 years. A clear-cut forest will not be useful for 50 years. That lost opportunity is the real cost." Margaret was scribbling in a notepad. "You are framing this as pure economics, not some moral duty. Investors get that. Money motivates everybody. If you can prove sustainable methods make more money in the long run, the argument is over." "You should write this up," Margaret told her. "A formal proposal for my board." Lydia glanced at Ethan, who gave her an encouraging nod. "All right," she said. "I will write it." The proposal took her 3 weeks of hard work. The entire household seemed to be rooting for her, especially Ethan, who reviewed her drafts and offered support. "This is excellent work," Margaret said after reading the final document. "You have made a case that even the tightest fist could not ignore." "Where did you learn to write like this?" "I did not," Lydia said. "I just wrote what made sense." "Well, even more impressive then," Margaret replied. "I would like to offer you a permanent consulting position for my mining operations. This would be your own contract, your own money." Lydia was stunned. "Are you serious?" "Completely. I need people who can think outside the box, and you have proven you can." Lydia looked over at Ethan, who was beaming. "It is your call," he said, "but I think you should take it. You have earned this." "Then yes," Lydia said, turning back to Margaret. "Yes, I accept." They shook hands on it. In that moment, Lydia was no longer just a timber baron's wife. She was a professional woman who had forged her own path. News from Denver came in early summer. The letter was from Caroline Crow. As Ethan read it, his face soured. "What is it?" Lydia asked. "Marcus is being investigated for fraud," he said, "selling fake mining claims. Caroline wants us to put out a public statement saying he has no ties to our business." "What are you going to do?" she asked. "Exactly what she wants," he said, "but not for her sake. Marcus has no connection to this business, and I want that in print." Ethan's smile was sharp. "We will just issue a simple statement of fact, no family drama. That will drive her crazy." "Good," he said. "She tried to ruin you. I have not forgotten that." Their statement ran in the Denver papers right next to stories of Marcus's arrest. Caroline's reputation took a nosedive. Lydia did not celebrate Caroline's fall, but she felt a quiet sense of justice. The woman who tried to make her feel small was now getting what she deserved. By midsummer, the valley was flourishing. The logging business was booming, all while using the sustainable methods Lydia had championed. One bright July afternoon, Lydia's mother, Margaret Hale, finally came to visit. She looked older and more worn than Lydia remembered. "Lydia," she breathed, looking around at the beautiful, bustling valley. "You did not tell me it was like this." "I was not sure you would believe me if I tried," Lydia said, giving her mother a hug. After a couple of weeks, Margaret had seen enough. The sprawling operation, the respect Lydia commanded, and the easy way she and Ethan worked together. "Your daddy would be proud," Margaret said one evening as they watched the sun go down. "Not because of the money. He would have seen you took a tough spot and built something good from it. That takes grit." She looked at her daughter. "But are you happy, child? Truly?" Lydia thought of the life she had now. It was a life of purpose, a true partnership. "I am happy," she said with certainty. This is not some storybook romance. It is quieter and stronger. We are building a life I can be proud of, with a man I have come to love." Her mother smiled, squeezing her hand. That is the kind of love that lasts. A partnership built on respect is the best foundation there is. One evening, Lydia had an idea. What if they taught other folks their methods? They could charge for consulting and build a business that wasn't tied to timber. Ethan grabbed a pencil, his mind already racing. They had the knowledge, and their success was proof it worked. Their goal was bigger than just profit. It was about changing the whole industry for the better. That autumn, they launched the Crow Institute. The first class had 6 foremen who came for 2 weeks of intense training. Lydia discovered a surprising talent for teaching, making complex ideas simple and practical. An old foreman named Tom Walsh pulled her aside. He said, "I have been in this business 30 years, and I never thought about it the way you describe." Word got out, and the institute grew. Justice finally caught up with Marcus, who received a 5-year prison sentence that left him financially ruined. His wife, Caroline, disgraced and alone, left for San Francisco. She sent one last bitter letter to Ethan, saying his mountain wife had been more formidable than they expected. Lydia read it and shook her head. "She still does not get it," Lydia said. "This was never about winning." Ethan agreed, saying some people only understand conflict, not partnership. He tossed the letter into the fireplace, watching the past turn to ash. That winter, Lydia looked out her window at the falling snow. She was no longer a stranger here. She was home. The connecting door to Ethan's room now stayed open. He entered quietly and said, "Come to bed." She turned to the man who had changed her life, realizing her escape had become her destiny. "You recollect what you told me when you first proposed?" she asked. "You said you valued plain talk over romance, that a business deal was better because there were no false hopes." "I remember," Ethan said, moving to her side. "My point is, you were right and wrong. Honesty and clear expectations are vital. But you were wrong to think those things couldn't grow into love. We built our love on that solid ground, and it made it stronger." He pulled her in close, looking out at the snow. "Well, look at you, the philosopher. I am just a woman who learned life's detours are sometimes better than the planned road." "This is better than anything I could have planned," he said softly. Then Lydia spoke again. "I want to bring my mother here. She is all alone in that cabin." "This is your home as much as mine," Ethan replied. "If you want her here, she should be here." She turned in his arms. "Thank you, Ethan, for everything." "Thank you for seeing me when I was just a shadow," she said, "and for believing in me." "You make it sound like I did you some favor," he said. "Lydia, you saved me from a powerful loneliness I never even admitted to." They kissed. 2 people who had built something real from the most unlikely start. Spring returned, and with it, Margaret Hale, who settled into a small cottage. She helped run the house and became a grandmother to all the children on the compound. The Crow Institute they founded grew faster than anyone imagined. In a few years, they had trained dozens of managers and even published a textbook on doing business the right way. Margaret Chen's own mines prospered using their methods, proving their ideas worked. And Lydia was no longer the scared girl she once was. She was a confident leader who never forgot where she came from. She started a fund to help families buried in the kind of debt that had almost broken her own. On a warm afternoon, 5 years after their wedding, Lydia stood with Ethan, watching new students arrive. Her hand rested on her belly, 7 months along with their daughter, who they would name Margaret. "Tired?" Ethan asked. "Always," she smiled. "But I am so content. I have no regrets." She thought back to the desperate choice that started it all. "I would not change a thing, not even the hardest parts," she said. "Those struggles taught me who I could be. They showed us what we could build together." She took his hand and placed it on her belly. where their daughter was kicking. This life, this child, our home, none of it would be here without every single hard choice we made. "You are a remarkable woman," Ethan whispered. "I am just stubborn," she replied. "You are both," he said, "and I'm grateful for it every day." She had married a poor mountain man who turned out to have wealth. But more important, she had married a partner who saw her true worth and helped her claim it. Together, they had built an empire not of power, but of progress and fairness. Their hidden valley was now a beacon, drawing people who wanted to build a better kind of world. At the heart of it all was Lydia, a woman who started with nothing but grit and ended up with everything that truly mattered. She had not been given this life. She had fought for it and built it one decision at a time. As the first stars appeared, they went back inside their home, a place of warmth they created from impossible beginnings. The valley was alive with the sounds of a thriving community. It was a good life, a life worth fighting for. And Lydia Crow, who once wondered if hope was even real, had proven that it absolutely was. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Every narrative is crafted to entertain, inspire, and empower our audience. We believe that great stories can change lives, and we are committed to bringing you content that matters. Thank you for being part of our community.